لله رب العالمين الحمد لله الذي جعلنا من المتمسكين بولاية سيدي ومولاي علي بن أبي طالب والحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful, we ask Allah again to send His greatest peace and blessings upon Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We praise Allah for all the blessings He has given us. And the greatest blessing being that He allowed us to be of the ones who remain steadfast, dedicated, and loyal on the path of our Master after the Prophet, the commander of the faithful, the prince of the believers, the protector of the Prophet and his message, Al-Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. We praise Allah for this blessing and every blessing, for without Allah we would have nothing. Assalamu alaikum, my dear respected elders, my dear respected brothers, my dear respected sisters, wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Tonight we come together anticipating the nights of the martyrdom, Istishhad Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, the martyrdom of the commander of the faithful, which we will begin commemorating particularly tomorrow, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, inshaAllah. In anticipation of these nights, I hope that you take special pause and reflection today with regards to the law that we're going to be focusing on. If you recall, those of us who were in attendance yesterday, we introduced this series that we have, 12 laws for today's world, a faith-based paradigm. Now, when we're looking at these 12 laws, inshallah, over these 12 nights, think of these as principles, as values, as rules, as things for you and I to use in making sure that when we're looking at our faith, looking at our religion, it's not just something abstract and in the clouds. It's not something that's detached from our day-to-day, but instead, it guides the way we live. It guides the way we interact with one another. It guides the way we treat the people around us, both near and far. It guides us. So look at these as that. Yesterday we covered the law of life and how important it is for us to acknowledge, realize, and operate on the basis that human life has the greatest value. And the sanctity of life is at the greatest level within the Muslim and especially the Shia Muslim paradigm. The Holy Prophet ﷺ, it's narrated that he said that the sanctity of the believer is greater than the sanctity of the Kaaba itself. We see how valuable life is. But one of the takeaways that we took with us yesterday night, I hope, is that unless you and I realize and acknowledge how valuable our lives are, we're not going to treat ourselves with that respect, honor, and dignity. Nor are we going to treat each other with that respect, honor, and dignity. So it starts with each and every one of us realizing when we look at ourselves in the mirror, who do we see? What do we see? Do you see a human being that is bestowed by their Creator with the blessing of life, and that life has to be honored? Or do you look at yourself as something that can be toyed with? Because if you don't respect yourself, you will not be respected. My dear brothers and sisters, if you don't mind, I ask of you, by the right of these holy nights, inshallah, when we come for a lecture, when we come for a discussion, that lecture and that discussion, like the ones we're having tonight, can be either one of two things. It can move you away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or bring you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The choice is yours. It can be something of lahu and something of play, something of entertainment, or it can be ibadah. And even more valuable than 70 years of ibadah. Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that reflection, at-tafakkur, sa'a min at-tafakkur. 1 hour of reflection is worth more than 70 years of worship. So I'm going to put it before you. For my dear respected sisters, for my dear respected brothers, if you wish to carry on inside conversations and not pay attention, no worries. The choice is yours. For me, inshallah, even if there's just a handful of people that want to pay attention and give their focus, I'm at your service. However, you're missing out on the opportunity and building on the respect for yourself and how much your time is valuable. Not just my time. Not just my time, but your time is valuable. So when you're sitting in a lecture, whether it's with myself or with anyone else, you have the opportunity to make it an hour of reflection worth more than 70 years of worship, or you can make it a waste of time. It's completely up to you. Inshallah, if we're going to be committed for these next nights and dedicating ourselves to an hour of reflection, let's raise a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I want to ask you a series of questions. And I want you to listen carefully to these questions. I want you to ask yourself, are you someone who can be taught? And are you someone who can be learned from? Are you someone who can be taught? And are you someone who can be learned from? Are you someone who has the capacity to learn? Are you someone who has the capacity to be mentored? Are you someone who's yearning to grow and be better for themselves? Or are you someone who is wishing to impart knowledge on others because you have what it takes? Are you something in between? In today's world, in today's age, where do you fall when it comes to the spectrum of ignorance and knowledge? Where do you fall? How knowledgeable are you? Ask yourself that question. How knowledgeable are you? You may look at yourself and say, I'm pretty knowledgeable. Then ask yourself, how ignorant are you? Our Imams give us some guidance on how we interact with knowledge, with information, with education, with reflection, and with ignorance. When we come towards knowledge seeking and see that for tonight, the law that we're discovering here tonight, inshallah, and reflecting on is the law of thought. And how you and I can be free thinkers in an age of perhaps new ignorance. Now, what do I mean by new ignorance? The Holy Prophet ﷺ came to transform a civilization, a people, and take them out of the darkness of the age of ignorance, Asr al-Jahiliyyah, which, by the way, was not an age of mere lack of information, but it was a mindset, it was a lifestyle. And He took them from the darkness to the light. But today, just like as the centuries before and like the centuries to come, you and I will continue to experience new ages of ignorance. And again, it's not about a lack of information. It's about a lifestyle. It's about a mindset. So when we're approaching the discussion here tonight, I want you to think further about the following questions. What is the difference between knowing something and understanding something? How much of you believe you actually know your religion? How many of you actually believe you actually know yourself? How many of you actually believe you know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Furthermore, if you were never told what to believe, how would you arrive at truth? We assume, and it's the greatest assumption, that Islam, and can be proven in so many ways, by revelation, by the aql, by the intellect, that Islam is the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and is the way. But let's say you were not given that. That wasn't given to you. You didn't inherit it as your religion, as your faith. How do you arrive at truth? Furthermore, what does ignorance look like today? We mentioned this new age of ignorance. What does it look like today? Is ignorance simply not knowing, or is it refusing to acquire knowledge? Is it simply not knowing and simply lacking information? Or is it the refusal to seek knowledge and engage with it? Is it possible to be highly educated, to have degrees, masters, PhDs, doctorate degrees, but at the same time still be ignorant? How much of what we think and what we believe is shaped by the society around us? How much of what we think and we actually believe is coming from the proper sources of guidance? Are we truly free thinkers, or do we just repeat what we hear from the loudest voices in society? Now I'm going to stop with the questions here. It's about 10 questions or so. And I'm going to delve a little bit deeper, inshallah, for us to continue to reflect. When we look at the idea of us being free thinkers, it comes from a basic principle called al-hurriya al-fikriyya. And this, by the way, is not just merely an Islamic doctrine, but it's a doctrine of those who possess intellect. And anyone who possesses intellect would agree that this idea of a freedom of thought, that the human being is free to think and believe whatever it is that they wish. Now, they may believe in certain things that are incorrect or false, but they have the ability and the freedom to think and believe as they wish. Now, when you and I look at our faith in Islam, what we have conviction in, and the society that we're living in, whatever society that may be, it could be you here in the DMV in Northern Virginia, in Washington, D.C., or it can be you in Baghdad, Iraq, or in Afghanistan, or in any other part of the world. You could be in these places having a belief, a conviction, but in the society that you're living in, what does everybody else around you believe? And how do you interact with that belief? The Holy Prophet ﷺ came forward with the religion of Islam, and the testimony to come into the religion of Islam was very simple. You are to testify and believe, bear witness that La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. There is no God but He, but Him, Allah, and Muhammad is His servant and His messenger. What was the first revelation given to our Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? What was it? Iqra. Read. We start off with this revelation as we started off with our Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to read. That was the first action by which the Holy Prophet would begin to dismantle an age of ignorance. And that is the action that you and I, when we look at ourselves today, if you and I want to be truly free thinkers, if we want to adopt this idea of that we are not slaves, we are not blind followers of anything that's just told to us, whether it's from society or any other source, but instead, we are approaching our faith and our way of life as Muslims, as followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, and as citizens of the societies and the countries that we call home. We are approaching our lives from what? This freedom of thought and this mastery of self that is within the platform and the launching pad of what? Iqra, education, to read. So you and I, if we want to, as the Holy Prophet ﷺ battled the age of ignorance that he was in, that he brought people out of the darkness into the light, you and I need to start off with the foundation that are we educating ourselves today? Are we reading today? And reading, my dear brothers and sisters, isn't just what? Picking up your phone and reading an article, or picking up a book and reading a book. But it starts with what? This idea that I want to educate myself to better myself and gain an understanding, because it's not merely about information. There's so much information and misinformation out there. Who here receives a lot of forwards and broadcasts on WhatsApp? WhatsApp broadcasts. Anybody? MashaAllah. Sisters, anybody receiving broadcasts on WhatsApp? Okay. Anyone receiving news on WhatsApp, on social media, on Instagram? Anyone? Okay. How many of us, when we're receiving the news, verify the validity of that news? Verify, where did this news come from? There are so many pieces of information that are being spread out there that are completely bogus. In fact, you'll find statistically that 98% of the pieces of information that are shared on the platforms of Instagram, TikTok, and WhatsApp have completely no basis whatsoever. Would you believe that? Would you believe that? I just made up that statistic. And just like I made up that statistic right now, saying it very fervently and confidently, 98%. People do that all the time online. People share information, and then usually what we're doing is, yes, yeah, and we just share it. We share it. The brothers were getting ready to cut up a clip and post it on Instagram just with a 98%. How do you make sure that when you're getting an education, when you're receiving information to build a knowledge base, that you're truly doing it on the right grounds, instead of just accepting whatever is being given to you and then sharing. You and I, my dear brothers and sisters, we're living in an age where we're so quick to just click, press, swipe, go on, share, without even thinking twice about it. How many of us are on social media? Instagram, TikTok. By the way, WhatsApp is social media too. It's all owned by Meta. Facebook. Brothers, we're not on Facebook, Instagram, mashallah. It's okay, everyone is. Everyone is. If you go onto your iPhone and you look at the screen report that you have, it'll tell you how much time you're spending on each one of those apps. The reality is, the vast majority of us, if not all of us, have some form of social media platform, whether it's Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, at the minimum WhatsApp. Alhamdulillah, as immigrant communities, right, many of us communicate with family overseas. WhatsApp is the platform. Now, I want to ask you a question, and think very carefully with me here today. All of the data that's there on these platforms, all of the data, all of your data, all of your information, where does it go? Who has access to it? Even with the encryptions. Who has access to all of your data, all of your information? Even your private accounts that you have on Instagram that, yes, people have to request to follow you. Even those. Who has access to all of that? Now just keep that in the back of your mind. Right? Keep that in the back of your mind. When you are on these social media platforms, when you're online, and you're trying to receive information, or let's say you're not even trying to receive information, but the information is coming to you. And now you're being exposed to a certain worldview, and you don't know who is actually sharing that worldview with you. Say the majority of people are going in a certain direction. Majority of people in today's society believe a certain way about a certain thing. And you just say, well, everyone believes this. Everyone believes this, so we should do it. On what basis? On what basis do you choose? Do you choose what education you seek? On what basis do you choose what job you seek? On what basis do you choose what business that you open? On what basis do you choose where to live and where to raise your family? On what basis? Oh, they say that this is a good job market in this specific industry. IT, it's a good job market. On what basis? Who shared that with you? Are they guaranteeing you that job? On what basis? Oh, they say that this is a good school. On what basis? Who's giving the ranking? On what basis? Now, I'm sharing this for you and for us to take a step back and think and reflect. You and I do so many things on a daily basis without even thinking twice about it, because we simply heard, we received, it is said. Who says that? who provided that information for. This is a good school, this is a good university, this is a good job. I should be receiving this much as an income. Why? On what basis? Many of us today, especially for my young brothers and sisters that are going to university, we're seeking an education, supposedly, we're seeking an education, we're gaining knowledge, we're going to universities, we're going to institutions of learning, investing tens of thousands of dollars on the whim that you may get a job for a company that you haven't even identified yet. That's the education that we're seeking. Versus seeking an education because that knowledge is what's going to bring you preparedness for life instead of a potential job market which is volatile. And you don't know if it's going up, it's going down. Tech is good right now. IT is good right now. No, engineering is better right now. No, you should go into this sector. No, you should go into this industry. You and I, my dear brothers and sisters, as free thinkers, as people that are following Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the one who his first revelation was Iqra. Iqra. Read. The education that you and I seek and the platform by which we come forth as a community in our society today needs to be an educated one. You and I need to challenge ourselves and challenge our young people when you're getting an education, which you should. I'm not going to come up here and tell you, no, education is a scam. You shouldn't go to the university. You shouldn't go to colleges. No, I'm never going to say that. Even with rising tuition, I won't say that. And tuition has risen. I won't say that. But what I will say is, you and I need to empower each other, especially those of us who are older, empower our young ones, the youth in the community, those who are 18, 19, even before that, in your high school years, empower them to do what? When you're seeking an education, we don't just want you to land a job. We don't want you to just have a good career. We don't want you to just be one who is making a decent income. No. We want you to become a leader in your society. What's the education that you need to lead? What's the education that you need to be successful? And what's the institution and the individuals that you need to surround yourself with so that you can attain that success? Now that's a completely different way of thinking. Now I'll tell you again, I'm son of immigrants. I'm a son of immigrants, proudly. My grandfathers were laborers. My father was a laborer. He was a laborer before he opened up his own business. If it wasn't for what my father did, what my mother did, what my grandparents did, I wouldn't be able to be here today saying I have an education. I have a doctorate degree. I can speak from this background. No, I wouldn't be able to say that. It comes from them. I stood on their shoulders. But now, you and I, in our generation, we have another responsibility. We're here now. There's a different phase that we go into. So when I'm looking at my role and my responsibility in society today as a son, as daughters of immigrants, we look and we see, how can we take what we have and build on it further so that the young Muslim in today's society, in the United States of America, is one who is a contributing member of that society and possibly a change maker in that society. Instead of merely being one who's on the receiving end, the short end of the stick, and someone who is what? Usually victimized by him or herself. There are so many things that we don't like in our society today, correct? Who here sees injustices, oppression, corruption in the world today? Who here sees injustices, oppression, corruption in the world today? Yeah. Who doesn't? And is that something that's reserved for the society that we live in the United States of America and North America? Absolutely not. Is that something that's reserved just for the East, from the lands that our parents or we came from? Absolutely not. It's a human condition. Humanity suffers from immorality. Humanity suffers from corruption. Humanity suffers from ignorance. And Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, Islam came to do what? To bring light into this darkness. and educate people, uplift them through education, through the light of education. And that's one of the reasons why you see the platform of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ being so clear. Look at the divine wisdom, and the first thing that was prescribed, the first thing that was commanded to the Prophet, Iqra, read. Once you read, once you take that step towards knowledge, everything opens up. But when you take that step towards knowledge, my dear brothers and sisters, you take that step towards knowledge with humility. You take that step towards knowledge with, I don't want to conquer the world. I don't want to become the master of the world. I want to become the master of myself. And I want to manifest that I am Abdullah, that I'm a servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So yes, when you go to George Mason University or the University of Virginia, or you go to Georgetown or George Washington or American University or any of the universities that we have here in this area, when you're going there, it's not a new identity that you take on so that you can get an education and become a professional and get paid here in the DMV. That's different than the person who is coming as a Shia Muslim to do ihya of Layal al-Qadr, to come and become a spiritual religious person. No, they're not two separate individuals. Iqra, read. That was the mandate of what? The human being through Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The journey of the human being is a holistic one. It's not where, okay, this is where religion is practiced, and then this is where income is attained. This is where I get my education and I build my career, and this is where I am to become successful in this world, and this is where I am to become successful. No. This separation and this distinction that we have, unfortunately, will create a duality of an identity. And in the coming nights, we're going to speak a little bit more about identity. But it's so important here. When you're looking and you're saying, what's my role in society today? We all just raised our hands saying, yes, there are injustices, there's corruption, there are bad things happening in the world, there are bad things happening in our society. Okay, what are you going to do about it? Well, okay, let me see. I'm going to go to Instagram. I'm going to go to TikTok. I'm going to go to Snapchat. I'm going to go to WhatsApp. And I'm going to upload, and share so I can spread awareness. God bless you for spreading awareness. Inshallah, may the millions of the people around the world be made more aware. Inshallah. But I think you and I can do more than that. Really? What can you and I do? What can you and I do when it comes to the things that you don't like about the world? By the way, there are many things that we should like and appreciate and say alhamdulillah and appreciate the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon us. For example, here in the United States of America, you and I have the freedom to practice our faith. You and I have something that many of us, many of our parents, many of our grandparents left their homes in order for them to freely come to a mosque called Imam Ali Center without fearing for their lives. That is one of the greatest blessings upon us in this country, and we need to be appreciative of that. Don't be hypocritical and say that you don't like what's going on in society, but at the same time you have so much to benefit from the very society that you don't like. Instead, acknowledge the good that exists and work on the things that you want to change, whether it's here or anywhere else. This applies uniformly, universally across the world. So when I don't like what I'm seeing around the world, is the first mode of operation for me to just get on, and I'm speaking to my youth here, the young people in the audience here, first and foremost, the elders, God bless you, I'll learn from you. Do I go to Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok and Facebook and just share whatever's on my mind? Why? Because everybody else is doing it. So whatever's in my heart, I put it on my social media platform. Whatever's in my heart, I put it on my social media platform. I put it on my story. Is that the way we operate? Is that the wisdom of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam? Is that the hikmah that our maraja, our scholars have given us through their movement of patience over the past several centuries to just share whatever's in your heart? Or no? Is there a little bit more that's required from us in being educated in how to be more effective in the societies that we live in? The very social media platforms that you're on perhaps are connected to the injustices and oppression and corruption that you are protesting. Perhaps. Perhaps. So what do you and I do? Instead of just going with whatever wave exists, God bless you for spreading awareness. God bless you for having the courage. But do you and I have the courage to educate ourselves further? Do you and I have the bravery to challenge our minds and seeing what else can I do where I am today? Where I am today. That's not an accident. I said this yesterday. I'm going to say it again. I'm probably going to say it every single night. Just so that, inshallah, anybody that doesn't hear it the first time is going to hear it a few more times. It's not an accident that you are here. It's not an accident that you live 14 miles away from the capital. It's not an accident. It's not an accident that our families came to the United States of America. It's not an accident that we're here physically. But you know what some of us continue to do? And without even realizing it, indulge further and in ignorance, and forgive me for saying this. We're here physically, but spiritually we're disconnected. We're here physically, but intellectually we're not here. We're here physically, but our souls are completely detached. You've made this a home. Your livelihood is coming from this society. Your kids are here. Your sisters are here. Your brothers are here. You live here. Be here. Figure out, and now I'm speaking again, back to the youth, back to the university students. You need to figure out for yourselves. If you really are a free thinker, and you do think for yourself, and you have your beliefs for yourself, you need to show up for that. What are you studying? What are you reading? Who are you engaging in discussions with? Is it just an echo chamber where all of you believe and think the same thing? Okay, let's say, mashallah, you have some agreement amongst the people in your room, in your group. Now, what are you going to do with those beliefs? Are you going to keep on complaining about how bad the world is? Or are you going to do something about it? And do something about it in an effective way. Now, some of us, even with everything that I just said over the past 10 minutes, we may be thinking, well, what does that look like? What does that mean? I'll tell you, it's very simple. When there is a problem, like the problems that the Holy Prophet ﷺ and Ahlul Bayt ﷺ faced in their society, when you saw what was going on in their society, was Prophet Muhammad ﷺ living in the society that he was in, or was he outside of it and completely detached? No, he was in Mecca. For 13 years he was in Mecca. Was Prophet Muhammad ﷺ antagonistic? Meaning what? He was an aggressor. He was trying to fight the people of Quraysh. No, he wasn't. He wasn't. He was believing what he believed. He was firm in his belief. He was clear in his identity. But he didn't go out swinging. He belonged to Mecca. He was a son of Mecca. And when he spoke to the Meccans, he spoke as a Meccan. When he spoke to the Arabs, he spoke as an Arab. When he was with his people, he was a man of the people. He wasn't a foreigner. And even when he left the persecution of Quraysh and built a community in Medina, guess what he did? He took people with him, Muhajirun. And those who supported him, they became Ansar. And then he paired them. He brought them together. Meaning what? The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was emphasizing through and through to bring about social change, to break down the age of ignorance. He focused on an integration that was intertwined in the society he was living in. He wasn't detached from his society, trying to tell people, this is what you need to do, and I'm telling you from the outside, and I don't believe in your society, and I don't believe in anything that you have. No. He was within. He was within. And it was all peaceful. It was all peaceful. Until what? People came, antagonized him, persecuted him, wanted to assassinate him, launched a war and battles against him, and he defended himself merely and just that. Now you and I, what does that look like for us? as Muslims and as followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, you and I, we should not be thinking of our role in society today as a passive one. Instead, it requires for us to become much more serious about the particular education that we have. Each and every one of us has a religious obligation to become educated with the foundations of their faith. At-tafaqquh bid-deen. That this one becoming more knowledgeable and understanding their religion is an obligation, by the way, for everyone, not just people that go to the seminary. So you and I, we need to understand, what is the mandate from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What is the mandate? The Holy Quran, I need to be reading it. I need to be reading it. The ahkam al-shar'iyya, I need to be reading it. The Islamic laws, I need to be reading it. So that I can do what? When I'm going to university, I know that this education, the spiritual and religious education, is connected to the rest of the education that I want. And I see it with a clear mission of where I want to be in society. Not just merely securing a job so that I can have a nice six-figure salary. Which, by the way, today, I don't know how much of a six-figure salary is going to help you anyways. Even once you hit $100,000, how much is that going to help you? Right? But beyond the numbers, because you are much more than a number. You are much more than a salary. Your education. Some people say, oh, I'm not going to go to university. Why? Because I'm not looking for any particular job. Really? But are you looking for knowledge, or are you just looking for a plaque and a degree and someone to offer you a job? By the way, and I'm telling you this as a professional, in all of the facets that I've been, in all of the firms, all the organizations, all of the businesses I've been, nobody has given me my rizq. No company, no firm, no one person, nobody has given me my rizq. I didn't even give myself my rizq. As hard as I may have worked, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives me my rizq. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you your rizq. So when you're going to your university and you're trying to make this movement of oneself where, yes, I am a free thinker. I believe what I believe on myself. And I'm trying to make a change in the society that I'm in. And hopefully break down ignorance around me for my family, for my community, and for my society at large. You need to be making sure that you are taking those steps towards it with an understanding of your responsibility and how much impact you can actually make by the places that you're in. My dear brothers and sisters, when we look at the future, sometimes we see all of the events in the world today and we lose hope. Sometimes we look at all of the injustices today and we lose faith. But I will tell you, so long as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses the earth and blesses humanity with His hujjah, with Sahab al-Asr wa zaman, Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajah al-Sharif, there is always hope. It's always there. But you and I, whether we are part of that hope or not, is up to us. Whether we want to educate ourselves and move ourselves away from ignorance is up to us. And it's very easy to convince oneself that you are simply because you're echoing what's being said and being shared on social media and within our WhatsApp groups, versus are you actually getting an education? Are you actually gaining knowledge or not? I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that in this reflection on the importance of seeking knowledge, on the importance of reflecting, on the importance of gaining an education, whether it's through an institution or outside of it, the importance of reading, that you and I are inspired here tonight to at the very least begin to ask questions of how effective can I be and what does my education actually look like. When I say read, it's not just a rhetorical thing, it's a literal thing. What books are we reading? Are you actually reading a book that is going to change your perspective? And when I say change my perspective, meaning what? It can deepen it. It doesn't necessarily need to completely change it. It can deepen it. When I'm reading, am I completing the book? How many of us pick up a book but don't finish it? And then you go on to another book, and you go on to another book, and you go on to another book, and and you just never finished it, right? Finish the books that you read. That's part of the problem. That's part of the problem. Who here sometimes feels scattered in their thoughts, scattered, right? Now someone may easily diagnose you, say, oh, you have ADHD or you have ADD. Today we're very quick to diagnose each other and tell each other of the psychological disorders that we have, mashallah. But other things, let's not go there. When you are committed to a path of knowledge and you realize that starting off, as I mentioned earlier, with that humility is of the utmost importance. Imam as-Sadiq alayhi salam, about that humility, he says half of knowledge is to say, I don't know. Unless you and I approach it with that humility, unless you and I think to ourselves, yes, I need to spend some more time on my education. Yeah, I may be going to a really prestigious university, but am I actually reflecting on the knowledge I'm gaining? Too often we look at knowledge and education as completely separate things. They all go hand in hand. Well, how can I make my degree something that is in my path towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Every single breath you take, whether you're playing with your younger siblings or your children, or you're going to the marketplace, you're going to the grocery store and you're buying groceries for your family, every single step you take can be a worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Every book you read, you can be studying computer science, and that could be in the way of God. But you have to have the wisdom and the moment of pause, or the moments of pause, to reflect and say, this is for you, Ya Allah. Or you're going to choose to be what? Like anyone else in society today, which is, yeah, I'm just going to get a degree, go to this university to get a job. Is that our mandate? No, it's not. I'll be very blunt. It's not our mandate to just go to university and get a job. Your job is part of your life. You getting a livelihood is part of your life. But a part of that is also relying on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give you your sustenance. Are you supposed to work very, very hard? Absolutely. Yes. But education is much more than just getting a means of a livelihood. So when we're saying, okay, what are you reading? What are you educating yourself with? What are you spending your time on? Who are you surrounding yourself with? Who are you spending your time with? Is it just regurgitating more ignorance? Or are you actually not wasting your time and gaining knowledge? Are you actually getting an education? Are you becoming more sophisticated? Someone says, why is there so much corruption in the world today? Why is there so much oppression in the world today? Why is there so much injustice? I don't know. Maybe do some research about it. How much are we aware of how decisions are made in our societies by the biggest corporations? How do they decide what products to produce? This phone, I think it's an iPhone 16 something, right? I don't know. My wife just upgrades the plan and just gives me the phone, right? She hands it to me. Here's the new phone. I'm like, okay, thank you very much. How does the company decide? How does Apple decide when to release a new phone? How does Apple decide when to give you a software update? And then you and I would just agree. Any one of you look at the terms and conditions of your software updates? Anybody? So I'm an attorney, right? I draft some of these for my clients, right? Even when I receive them, I don't read it. That's reality. But you're signing away. What did I start off with? Access, data. You're signing away information. You're giving it away. Now, okay, I'm giving that away, but I'm using it. Now, you're giving that away and you're using this. What is this being used for? How are you spending your time on this? Does it increase you in ignorance? Even if the ignorance is what? Is complex. Does that increase you in ignorance or bring you closer to the light in education and knowledge with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? We come away in these holy nights of Shahr Ramadan with hopefully betterment and rejuvenation. But too often we have it based on a feeling of betterment, a feeling of rejuvenation, a feeling of spirituality. I feel spiritual. Who here during the holy nights of Ramadan feels more spiritual? MashaAllah. Brothers don't feel spiritual, just the sisters. Brothers don't feel anything. All right? They're just hungry. No, some of the brothers are raising hand. Okay, you feel more spiritual. What if I told you spirituality is not a feeling? What if I told you spirituality is not a feeling? Spirituality is a commitment. Spirituality is a lifestyle. Spirituality is a mindset. When you want to be more spiritual, what do? One of the students of the Hawza came to one of the great Maraja, who was also a grand mystic, a Arif. And he asked him, he said, Shaykhna, Maulana, I want to become spiritual like you. I want to be on your spiritual path. What should I do? Connecting you to what? Your spirituality, your knowledge, and your lifestyle. This is what he said. He said, you want to be more spiritual? He said, yes, I want to be on your path. I told him, okay, this is what you need to do. The student was getting ready. This Hawza student, he was getting ready to get a whole prescription, a whole program, spiritual program. He tells him, don't sin. Don't sin. The student was baffled. Okay, what else? He said, that's it. Just don't sin and you'll be on the spiritual path. That's it. That's all I got to do is not sin. And I'm going to become spiritual. I'm going to become an arif. Yeah, that's all I got to do. Don't sin. I want to ask you something. When you have people that get up and try to fool you with all these different kinds of things, but the real ones tell you, listen, take the Quran, take Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, pray your prayers, read your dua, stay away from sin, and you'll have your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What are they telling you? They're telling you spirituality is not a feeling. Some people may have feelings. I feel spiritual. That's a feeling. That's not what closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Iblis felt very spiritual. Iblis, mashallah, he prostrated to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for 3,000 years. He's felt very spiritual. And that feeling also made him be what? Egotistical. No, Aba wastakbar. No, I'm not going to prostrate. Iblis had ignorance. Iblis had ignorance. And you and I, unfortunately, even when we take our spiritual path, our religious path, sometimes we fool ourselves into thinking we're getting closer to religiosity and knowledge and spirituality, but what we're really doing is what? When you're lacking that humility, when you're lacking that humbleness, you're actually taking yourself to what? Ignorance. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to purify our hearts from old ignorance and new ignorance. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the clarity of our path in seeking an education and seeking knowledge so that we can understand our role and our responsibility in society today. First and foremost before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then to ourselves and to each other. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring us closer as a community, to unite us in the love of Muhammad wa al Muhammad. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to manifest truly for ourselves this hurriya fikriya, this intellectual freedom, this freedom of thought, so that you and I can exchange ideas freely within the foundations and the framework of our faith, within the bounds of Islamic law, within what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us as a path forward. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to celebrate the diversity that we have in the different thoughts that we have. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to ground us further in our faith. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to heal our sick. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have mercy on our marhumin, inshaAllah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala this and the hastening of Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman, Ajalallahu ta'ala farajuhu al-Sharif. And the last of our prayers, and Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa afdal as-salatu wa taslim ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala ali baytihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin. And let's recite as we have been over the past